Hello, everyone. Welcome to this event about just transition, building the workforce of tomorrow. We are extremely glad to have you here in COP28 to discuss about this issue that has become the talking town in this COP. Everyone is talking about just transition here in the corridors, in the negotiating rooms, and of course in a lot of side events. But this particular one is going to be focusing on the role of youth and also on about how we are thinking about those just transition pathways the world needs. We are going now, if we can just show in the slide deck, we are going to be having an event that is going to had the luxury of having plenty of speakers and contributions, but also hopefully your contributions as well. It's going to be a quite interactive setup. We are going to be starting with Christina, that I'm going to introduce in a second, and you can see already our great panels that I'm going to be introducing in a moment. I would like to also walk you a little bit through what we are going to be doing today. In the next slide, please. You can see that we are going to start with a keynote speech from Cristina Lobillo from the European Commission. We are going to have two contributions from two keynote speakers, two scene-setting presentations of people that are not present right now, so they are joining us virtually. And then we are going to have a panel discussion coupled with some interaction with you all using an interactive tool that we are going to introduce you in a second, and then a deep dive on the issue of youth. I would like to also let you know that we are going to be using, that this side event first is being live streamed right now, and I'm just saying hello to all those connecting from abroad and outside of Dubai. I'm also inviting you to use your headsets because that's the best way in which you can listen to this event. We know it's a relatively noisy, can be a quite noisy environment, so I encourage you to take your headsets. The side event will be using an interactive polling tool that we can just show you. It's called Slido. Here you have the QR code. I very much encourage you to take that QR and that address because we are going to be asking you some questions as we go along. And this is also the tool that we are going to be using for gathering your questions to our distinguished panel. So you are invited to give it. We are going to come back a couple of times with that QR code as well. Without further ado, I would like to invite Cristina Lobillo. She's the director for the Energy Platform Task Force in DG Ener in the European Commission, to give us her keynote speech and welcome us and frame the conversation in this panel. Cristina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Annabella, and good afternoon, everyone, distinguished panelists, and all participants, the ones who are here in the room, and also those who are following the event online. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you and to discuss on an essential topic in the energy transition. I think that when it comes to just transition, we need to focus on the three main messages. The first one is green skills. We need green skills for the first and just transition. These are instrumental to make sure that the transition happens in a fair way. The second one is workers and people. A transition can only succeed if it takes place bottom up, being inclusive to all who are concerned, and also a transition that does not leave anyone behind. And third, youth. We need the young people, the future generation, for who we want to create a greener, healthier, and climate-neutral future, and who need to empower and train so that together we can achieve such a future. Let us start by the green skills. Skilled labor with the right set of skills, qualifications, and talent is fundamental to succeeding in a just energy transition. However, the acceleration of the transition has shown that there is a shortage of skilled labor. We can see that, in particular, in the bottleneck in the deployment of renewable energy. Skilled labor in the clean energy technology sector is particularly critical for Europe's long-term competitiveness and economic prosperity. It is estimated that the European Union will need to create 3.5 million new jobs in the renewable energy sector by 2030. This is a monumental task that entails more than doubling today's existing workforce of an estimated 1.5 million workers. To achieve this, we need to up and reskill the existing workforce and attracting new talent, including through labor migration. To reflect these important priorities of the European Commission, we made 2023, this year, the Year of European Year of Skills. Among our initiatives, the European Commission, together with our member states, we work on several large-scale partnerships, which entail stepping up our collaboration with the private sector to address the challenges on different key industrial ecosystems. For example, the large-scale partnership on onshore renewables was launched this year and aims to empower workers with the skills that are needed for the manufacturing and management of renewable energy technologies. It aims to support the qualification process of between 2,000 and 24,000 new workers over the next 5 years, with a focus on young people, youth, and women. Further, such partnerships are being developed, including on energy efficiency and also on digital skills. Initiatives like these are critical to building a workforce with the right skills. And this is important for our economy, our energy system, and in the fight against the climate change in the world. Let's focus now on the inclusive just transition. This is a very important point for the European Union and for all countries in the world who are in the process to achieve this energy transition. No one should be left behind. The rationale for this is very clear. A transition can only succeed if it's carried out bottom-up by the people that it concerns. And for this to happen, people need to clearly see and benefit from the clean energy transition, be it through essential and abundant job opportunities of lower skills. Advancing the skills dimension of the clean energy transition requires collective effort at all governance levels and, importantly, across policy areas and sectors. In Europe, we have seen the importance of national, regional, and local authorities to closely work together with academia, industry, and schools in particular. And this brings me to my very final point. The role of youth is key in this regard. The talent, motivation, and willingness of young people are needed today to make the world a better and fairer place for their children. As we share this goal as policymakers, industrial leaders, or other stakeholders, we take an obligation to empower them and to address their ideas and concerns, and ultimately to learn from them. This is how we will succeed together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cristina. I think it was thank you also for bringing like the three key elements and bringing them together in a common framework for the conversation that is coming later to the panel as well, because we are going to be discussing about the challenges also that we are facing in trying to make those three objectives real for the people. But before we get into the panel, we would like to bring also to the conversation two short interventions. One from Mirnes Bajtarevic, the mayor of Kajan in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that has given us also his words on a video that we would like to screen now for a moment. So can we put the video, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to present to you Kakan in the next few minutes, a small municipality in Bosnia and Herzegovina, our history, experiences, fears and plans within the implementation of the just transition in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of the session at the European Union Energy Days within the framework of COP28. I hope that in this way we can contribute to the session on the topic of just transition, building the workforce of tomorrow, and share experiences and plans for the implementation of just transition in Kakanj. Kakanj is a municipality in the center of Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Europe, with 37,000 residents. This year, we are celebrating 631 years since the first mention of Kakanj. Kakanj is an industrial town and a pillar of the energy development of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In our area, the coal mine, which has existed for 121 years, the thermal power plant and the Kakanj cement factory are located. Over the years, development of the industry has brought many benefits, but also consequences for the environment and life in this area. We expect that in the final phase of industrial exploitation, huge areas of degraded land will be freed, which we should put to the function of creating a new value. Kakanj is also rich in forest, as 60% of our municipality is covered by forest. However, our great asset is our people. As part of the energy transition, difficult times and difficult decisions await us. The largest number of our employees are engaged in the mine and thermal power plant, and companies that base their businesses on these two. 3,000 people are employed in this industry. That is, approximately 12,000 residents of Kakanj live from these companies. We still don't have an answer on how to find a new job for those who could lose their jobs due to the transition process. Therefore, we rightly expect help from the European Union and the authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina in order to be ready to meet and overcome the transition. The municipality of Kakanj was part of the exchange with places from the European Union through the Just Transition project. We visited Bulgaria, the area of Stara Zagora. We saw some positive things, but there were also those that did not excite us. We are aware of the difficult processes that follow and have been working of them for years. Through a policy of incentive for the establishment of private businesses, students, scholarship, energy efficiency measures, development of agriculture and food production. In terms of energy, we are looking for a chance in solar power plants. A couple of such facilities have already been built in Kakanj. The municipality of Kakanj has also started the process of building a solar power plant for its own needs. We will install solar panels on all 3 roofs of public buildings. We have been working for years to make our agriculture, organic food production better, which provides additional jobs and additional income and profit. In our area, there is also a source of geothermal water that has not been sufficiently used. In the future, we want to use geothermal water for heating through a public district heating system. The district heating system in Kakanj has been in operation since 1986 and as a media use hot water from the local thermal power plant, which could stop working due to energy transition processes. We still don't know if this source is sufficient, but with technical and financial support from the European Union, we could find out soon. Our goal is to help our citizens with energy efficiency measures to adequately insulate as many buildings as possible in order to reduce heat energy use. The municipality is in the final process of firming public buildings. We also see our chance in the development of the tourism. Kakanj is a royal city from which the statehood of Bosnia and Herzegovina begins. In our area, the oldest mosque and Franciscan monastery in Bosnia and Herzegovina are located. The only ski resort in the Zenica Dobre canton is located in Kaken. We emphasize mountain, religions, and rural tourism. This could create new jobs and the profits. The proximity of the capital city of Sarajevo and the airport guarantees us a good position and the arrival of tourists. In order to speed up the transition process for the local community, to carry out this process painlessly, to create replacement jobs and the survival of life in our area, we need technical and financial support. Kakan cannot achieve this without the help of funds. Also, better cooperation of all levels of government is needed. We in Kakan are aware of our potential, our opportunities, but also our threats and weaknesses. However, if we make the right decision, we can turn all threats, weaknesses, and challenges into our opportunities.
Thank you very much, and I think we should applaud and thank the mayor of Kakan for contributing to the conversation and showing that just transition is not just an easy fix and something for which we have a miraculous tool. It's complex, and there are also fears and challenges involved in trying to figure out how we move out, in this case, from coal and thermal power plants. So I guess for the panel also, in terms of the thinking, for your contributions. The second and final intervention before we go into the discussion is coming from Shikhar Jain. He's joining us from India. He's going to be live with us joining the event. He's the executive director of the CII-ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development. So, Shikhar, may I ask for you to appear in the screen? Can we show him in screen and connect us to Shikhar? Yes, he's coming. Yeah, here he is. Hello, welcome to this conversation. So yes, the floor is all yours. We're looking forward for your contribution to the conversation.
Thanks for inviting me to this pre-panel sort of setup, pre-panel intervention, I should say, and for a very important topic of building the workforce of tomorrow. I represent Confederation of Indian Industry, which is one of the world's largest and oldest industrial association. And we have a big membership of small scale industries, the MSMEs, and that's why this topic is very relevant to us as we set up the discussion for today in this panel. And we also uh, uh, know that climate change possesses a very serious risk to businesses in the form of extreme weather events, resource scarcity, regulatory changes, and also shifting consumer preferences. Two things that I have to just lead from the country point of view, that our Prime Minister has, during COP26, initiated something called as Mission Life, which is lifestyle for environment, which is asking for mindful and deliberate utilization of resources and come out of mindless and destructive consumption, which very well links to SDGs 12 of sustainable consumption and production practices. And according to International Energy Agency, Mission Life approach can potentially reduce around carbon emissions by 2 billion tons every year till 2030 if that lifestyle change is adopted at the society level. To take that extension, Prime Minister at COP28 very recently launched the Green Credits Initiative, which India is taking along into the implementation phase. And this initiative has been launched during the COP28 on the Leaders' Day, along with the President of the European Council and also in the presence of His Excellency President of Sweden and also the President of Mozambique. So I think that's the sort of the change that India is showing from the policy direction point of view, where the lifestyle mission and the green credits for the industries to adopt and for the society to get involved can take place. And from this, taking lead from CI perspective, what we have done is that we have announced something called as CI Climate Action Charter, which is dedicated to the MSMEs supply chains. And we have developed the toolkit, which not only takes into account the mitigational aspects, but also a little bit on the adaptation side, which is on the vulnerability part and all. Because what we have learned is that when we are creating this awareness for the MSMEs uh, through this charter, where 250 MSMEs have already joined and signed this charter, we see a lot of awareness has to be created uh, around climate, not only from the point of view of GHG emission calculation, reduction, roadmap. How do we look into the issues related to resilience? How do we see that these MSMEs are also connected into the value chains, and some of these value chains are in the value chains of European and Indian companies, which are very big multinationals, where when they are doing the transition, the impact is going to come on the MSMEs. So we are doing a lot of capacity building with the scope 1, 2 calculations, and also the vulnerability part, because adaptation is very important. So we have followed two approaches over here when we are working with the MSMEs. One is that we have taken the geographical clusters in the provinces in India, where we do some sector-wise examination. We try to come out with the skills development part where the upliftment needs to be there, and what are the roles of these individuals for greening the industries. Say, for example, in the energy sector, we have seen that, okay, how the energy efficiency part, so how the upscaling has to be done, upskilling has to be done, because many of the laborers are now learning the new technologies which are coming in. Similarly, India is a very agri-based nation also. So the farmers have to adopt certain climate resilient and the environmental friendly methods. And this year has been announced as the year of millets. So I think that is also one thing that we are seeing from the agriculture point of view, that we have taken certain initiatives. In automotive sector in India, we are seeing the role of sustainable manufacturing and new technologies, where the workforce has to learn fast on the upcoming EV, the electrical vehicle transition that is taking place. These are certain areas where we are sort of mapping sector by sector, that where the coordinated effort needs to be there. And what we see is that this would be very important, not only from the uh, upscaling point of view, but the just transition requires a complete coordinated effort from governments, from businesses, communities, workers, to ensure a sustainable and fair future for all. So I will stop here, and we have the experiences that we could share with you. And just for the sake that this is a very important topic, and through the cluster approach, we are trying to showcase it to the world. So that's from my side. Thanks, and I return it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Shikar. I mean, I think it was extremely important to hear from you. I mean, like there were several elements, but in particular, your focus on the micro, small, and medium enterprises, and what does in this, I mean, whole just transition effort, and as you said, even the understanding of the big picture in terms of their resilience, the connection to bigger supply chains, how they respond to this, and where you ended as well in terms of the institutional approaches and the coordination that is needed among multiple actors, which is also something that I'm sure, I mean, Kamal can also share, I mean, in terms of the experience in the ILO. So I think these two interventions were quite good and complementary in bringing us to our panel. In this conversation about just transition and building the workforce of tomorrow, we probably wanted to start first with the concept and what the just transition big picture, let's say, trying to discuss first with you all in the panel what is from your perspective that is working when we are trying to address the challenges of advancing together the energy transition and the fight against inequalities in all its dimensions. I mean, we know we have elements related to poverty and wealth inequalities, but also gender inequalities, age elements as well, that we are going to be focusing more specifically on youth. And of course, I mean, probably asking also the panel that is coming from very different backgrounds and experiences, any example that you think can give us a sense of best practice or at this stage, because we are still in early days for just transition, where you are seeing innovations that from your perspective are promising. So I would like to first hear from Kamal, an old-time friend, that Mustafa Kamal Gay, that is the director of the Priority Action Program on Just Transition towards Environmentally Sustainable Economies and Societies in the International Labour Organization. I was wondering, Kamal, if you would like to kick us off with some of your big picture challenges, opportunities, and also potentially some examples on this Just Transition conversation.
Thank you very much, Annabella. I hope you hear me well, so don't have to talk too loud. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to join this event. I think the title itself is very explicit. How do we build the workforce of tomorrow? I also appreciate what we have heard from our keynote speakers. And for us in the ILO, and as you know, we are a specialized United Nations agency that has the specificity of having as constituencies representatives of governments, workers' organizations, and employees' organizations. It is a unique setup in the UN system, and perhaps because of that setup where we actually have actors in the real economy coming together to discuss issues of the economic and social transformation that the world needs with the energy transition and the climate agenda globally, there has been from the beginning a very clear understanding that the energy transition and the climate agenda, they are not environmental issues only. These have implications in terms of massive socio-economic transformations. And the ambition that countries need to achieve that transformation can only happen if it's not tied to numbers only. You know, we all read IPCC reports. The UN Secretary General reminds us of the absolute urgency of keeping 1.5 degree alive. But we have to realize, and we see that member states and countries are also gradually understanding that the ambition is really about the people. What we have heard about enterprises being able to transform themselves, come up with business models that link labor productivity, which has been our focus in the world of work, but increasingly with resource productivity and energy efficiency. The challenge of having workers with the right skills that will make the transformations in agriculture, in energy, in transport systems possible. And the challenge, as we have heard from the municipality, of communities transforming their economies and societies. So these are all human-centered dimensions that will make that ambition possible. So we think that that broader understanding of what the climate and the energy transition demand is taking shape. The challenge is how to operationalize it. And so what we have seen in our work is that there are three important elements. The countries that have started to get a sense of how their energy transition objectives, their climate goals would impact on labor markets and the economy altogether are making some important steps, because to inform policies, the analysis, the data, the quantification of impacts ex ante is quite critical. So that analytical part we think is very important. The second is the policy coherence. So which I said earlier, the climate goals, the energy targets are important, but alone they will not take countries where we need to be. We need to build policies on human development, skills. We also know that, as we have seen in the video, there is going to be unavoidable damage. Some will lose jobs, enterprises may lose income, profit. So how do we support them in that transition? And that brings the important role of social protection, social security, income support, insurance mechanisms. And finally, this is not an agenda for governments alone. We have heard from industries, we know the important role that trade unions play. And we see that countries that have been able to forge that social consensus where all actors in the real economy, governments, business, workers, communities, come together, get a common sense of direction, they have been able to go further. And we see a lot of those experiences, whether it is in Spain, in Germany. So I think there's a lot that we can learn on this culture of social dialogue. And I want to end there on that point of building social dialogue will enable the strong social consensus, which is going to be indispensable for ambition. So these are some of the elements of what we see, and it's encouraging, but I think much more needs to be done on those three fronts.
Thank you so much, Kamal, for this intervention. And I really appreciate the idea that just transition is clearly not just about numbers. There are people behind those numbers. There are also development challenges behind those numbers. And actually, this is why I think going to Vivi now, I mean, Vivi Yulaswati from Indonesia, she's the Deputy Minister for Natural Resources in the Ministry of National Development Planning, Bappenas, which even from, I mean, like, even your position in government, like working on natural resources in the development ministry, also places where this conversation is actually sitting in Indonesia. So Vivi, yes, I mean, I wonder what your reflections on those challenges and examples are right now in your multi-million people country. I mean, beautiful one, by the way. But
first of all, thank you very much for the question as well as the opportunity to talk in the very important agenda, I think. Unfortunately, the development of Indonesia still rely heavily on the coal up until now. And as a result, our emissions are still increasing, and it gives a burden also to the subsidy because since 2004, Indonesia is already a net importer of oil and of course and other sources. So the energy transitions is one of the strategy that we put under the green economy within the 20 years development plan. We call it the long-term development plan 2025-2045. And the energy transition for sure will bring many changes, the development projections, business orientation, and of course the jobs. And based on that, we have several studies that already resulted that actually one of it is the low carbon development initiative studies, which shows that the net zero economy, or if we go through with the right direction on the green economy, it will create up until 2.2 million new job for the green one. So another study also shows that we need around 500 gigawatt of the new renewable energy in order to keep our growth growing as we want. So that's why we have to prepare the energy transition in which we keep growing but cleaner. So other studies also show some challenges. The first is on the skill gap. We know that there are several high-skilled jobs that are common to both coal and also the renewable. However, many coal jobs have few transferable qualifications to the renewable energy. So some strategy that we are preparing is, of course, mobilizing the public and private investment to expand the educational facility, the curriculum, and also the staff as fast as possible. The second barrier is about the locations. The coal workers are currently not located where the renewables potential is at the highest. For example, some coal productions lies on the regions like in the Kalimantan and also part of the Sumatra. However, the potential of renewables are in other places like in Java or on the eastern part. So the geographical shift of the employment needs may require former co-workers to move, or we need to find new job for them. So some recommendation, of course, besides the helping the creating a new skills, maybe temporary income need to be also provided for the earlier coal workers. The other barriers is about the income, the size of the income from the coal mining, despite that it's quite high at the moment. However, a wage premium in the mining sector is common across other countries too. And we don't know yet about the differentiations of the income for the renewable energy, whether, and also of course the progress among the locations. So in this regard, it will also bring some policy implications about how setting the investment fund that could offer source of temporary income to the workers that may reduce their benefit. So we also learn from some regions that are now already in the context of preparations, because we already starting for the early phase for the coal power plant to phase down or early retirement. So some of quite a good example has been showed. For example, one area in West Sumatra that already expand their status of the geopark to get a status to be a global geopark in order to expand their potential of tourism, the ecotourism, from as well as from the culture. So shifting the potential of the regions from the sources to the tourism, of course, need new skills that need to be given to the people. So within the JETP, Indonesia part of the JETP, we already put some foundation concept for the just part. Particularly, we put under two pillars. The first is about the leaving no one behind, and some standards include the culture heritage, displacement and the resettlement, local and customary communities, and the labor and working condition. I mean, we have to really set up when we talking about the investors as well as the projects in each location. And the other pillar is about the sustainability and resilience. And some standards including the biodiversity conservations and sustainable natural resources management, and then climate change and disaster risk, community health, safety and security, and then pollution prevention and resource efficiencies and economic diversification and transformations. And of course, there are still many homework to be done, but we do hope that all the investment for all the transition, the energy will follow this standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivi. And I think like there were many elements there. I mean, like of course you ended with the J in the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, which I think is an extremely important one. I mean, and also trying to figure out what that justice element means in the context of Indonesia as well. And you were pointing out also to the job quality gap that we might see as well between what comes, what leaves and what comes. And I think in that aspect also we have a critical role for the private sector as well in trying to ensure like a sort of balance in the quality of the jobs that we are letting go and the ones that are coming in renewables. And on this, I think it's an excellent segue into Miguel Muñoz Rodriguez, the head of the climate policies and alliances in Iberdrola. I mean, a very well-known multinational company working on the future of energy. And Miguel, we wanted to hear your thoughts about, well, I mean, just transition workforce of tomorrow, but also any reflection on the challenges of making the transition happen. Miguel.
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this interesting panel. Yes, so for us as a company that has embraced an ambitious approach on climate policy, I think it's important to combine this ambition with a just transition approach too. I would like to highlight as a best practice, and it is very important, I think, when you are tackling as a private company the process of meeting climate goals, to count with a climate transition plan that is fully aligned with the recommendations of the Integrity Matters report. The Integrity Matters report was presented last year at COP27, and it included 10 recommendations. One of the recommendations was to embrace a just transition process when you were tackling your climate goals. We as a company have set ourselves the goal to be net zero emissions in all scopes, 1, 2, and 3, before 2040. This process will be accompanied, and is transparent, is public, by an ambitious investment plan to be 100% renewables by that time, to be fully equipped with smart grids on that time, and this is accompanied by huge investment. I can give some figures, but these are massive. 70 billion investment by 2030, from 2026. These are massive. These investments cannot be done without taking in count that you have to create value, social value, at local level, and also value for nature. That's the reason why we have accompanied this climate plan also by a biodiversity plan with the goal to be net positive in biodiversity by 2030. How we embrace just transition? We are now in a different situation. We had two phases. The first phase was when we were closing down our coal facilities some years ago. We had very interesting examples in that phase that now has finished. We were, for example, in Spain, working with all stakeholders in just transition agreements. In those areas where we had coal plants, we were building conversations with municipalities, local NGOs, local stakeholders, and we work to build, for example, new renewable facilities there, some skills center, and we also develop, for example, in Scotland, there are very interesting plans with, to provide training for those workers that were in our coal plant to be re-skilled to embrace renewables areas, and also talking with local actors. This was in that phase, but now I think we are in a very important phase. Now we have to deploy, we have to triple our renewable capacity by 2030, quite ambitious goal. We have to invest a lot every year. And this is also a just transition aspect. We don't have to focus also when we close coal. We have to focus how we build an ambitious pathway of investments in renewables under a just transition. I think it's important when you develop this process to have a proper conversation with your key stakeholders. That's the reason why we launched 2 years ago the Plan Convive in Spanish, co-living. In English, I would say you have to, in some way, to be able to be co-living in an open conversation with all the stakeholders where the renewables will take place. You cannot do it alone, because at the end of the day, you are installing these plants in the territory where people live, whether it's agriculture, whether it's nature. And this plan has a wide range of programs across all our jurisdictions where we have opened key conversations with NGOs, with municipalities, to adapt the installations, to in some way collaborate to create social aspect, to integrate businesses in agriculture with renewable plants. This is the co-living plan. But we find at the same time that we cannot do it alone, and we have to work with alliances, with very well-recognized alliances. We have open conversation with ILO, for example, very productive. We are part of the Green Job Pact that was launched last year at COP. But also we are working with UNICEF when we have built very robust collaborations to provide trading courses, to provide entrepreneurship skills. For example, in Somalia, we have very interesting alliances on that field. And we are also developing very important training programs. And we are especially proud of those programs that combine several aspects of society. For example, youth, gender, inequality. And we are very proud of a program that is called in Brazil the School of Electricians. It's focused on training women to be electricians. We train more than 250 every year. 70% of them join the company. And we have been awarded by UN for this program. So there are a lot of examples that maybe we can focus on the second part of the conversation. But as a key remark, I think that we have to commit ourselves ambitiously with climate action. We have to accelerate energy transition, of course, for this, based on renewables. But you cannot do it if you don't embrace an ambitious approach too for the just transition process. Working with communities, creating jobs, green jobs, quality jobs, and working also with youth. We will talk later, but very important issue.
Thank you so much, Miguel. I think they were, again, really interesting and complementary elements. And I particularly appreciated the importance of building social consensus around the policies that we need to promote under a just transition. And this applies indeed to phase out elements, but also to phase in elements. Communities need to be involved in that process as well to fully own the benefits of this new model. You were ending there where we are starting, with youth and youth visions. But I would like to introduce you all to Sarah Mansour, that we are extremely glad to have with us in this panel. She's the International Youth Delegate for COP28, also working on sustainable energy for all as a youth intern, and being also one of the representatives of the Yungo constituency, so the youth constituency in the UNFCCC process as part of the energy working group. So we are going to be, Sarah, talking about more specifically about the youth dimension, but I wonder, I think we always ask young people to speak about youth, but I think it's also important to hear your views also on this broader just transition narrative and conversation, and how you are seeing it also from the reality of your country, and yes, any element that you would like to flag on in terms of challenges and ways forward.
Thank you for bringing me here. Actually, I love when you said youth. We're not going to talk only about youth, but also the challenges in our countries. Since I'm at the European Union Pavilion and everyone from all over countries, I'm also glad I'm from MENA country. Algeria is part of North Africa and part of Africa. The problem that everyone's saying that MENA region is producing oil and gas, and Africa also, but we totally forget that even we are having 57% of the producing of oil and gas and 40% of gas reservation, we totally forget we are not emitting the CO2 or carbon dioxide. We have Africa only emitting 3 to 4% of CO2, and UK itself, it's nearly to 3%. And MENA region, we have 10 countries producing fossil fuels, oil and gas, but we are emitting only 7%. So the challenges is we have really cheap electricity, we are not emitting. So how we can go through a just transition? Even in my country, we are always trying to make some energy and some renewable energy projects, but always we fail down. The problem is we cannot attract investments. Secondly, we have the problem of the technology and really limited infrastructures. So, for example, MENA region countries and countries like Algeria, we tried in 2015. Even when we signed Paris Agreement, we're going through renewable energies, but we have that problem of climate problems, that we have really extreme heat. So if we're gonna use fossil fuels, for example, we cannot, for example, photovoltaic system have like 20% the efficiency and in the 25 degree. But if we go in the desert of Algeria and we have like Nor Abu Dhabi, we're going like to decrease the efficiency. If we go into another technologies, for example, concentrated solar powers, like even we have like one of the biggest one is the Nor Warzazat CSP, which is one of the biggest. But I met some engineers. They have like the problem of water scarcity. So CSP is using a lot of water, and the people living in this area have to migrate or change their place, even they have like their lands because of the water. So the biggest problem is even we are dependent on Europe to give us technology, but Europe doesn't have the same weather, doesn't have the same condition as MENA and Africa countries. So also we have in Africa, like more than 600 million people doesn't have access to energy. As Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, the COP28 president, said, like, even we are tripling like the use of fossil fuels, we are also trying to triple renewable energies. So how I'm going to tell 500 million people, hey, you should stop using fossil fuels. You don't even have the access to clean cooking. We have 1 of 7 people doesn't have the access to cooling. Even like people saying cooling is part of lifestyle, but cooling is not, like it's health, and people dying because they don't have access to cooling. So if you should go through renewable energies, you should also consider those people who cannot, and their economy depends on fossil fuels. This is the main challenge. So it's hard to phase out and go from fossil fuels. We need to go step by step and stop blaming the countries, and we need really international cooperation and like exchange of the knowledge and technology without using that country like resources and say, hey, we are helping you and giving you money, but you are not, you are using also their resources. So this is one of the main challenges we are suffering of.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I mean, for bringing also those elements. And I mean, I really believe, I mean, that we need to see in youth delegates not only the representatives of the next generation, but actually also as contributors of a social movement in their own countries, what you all are. And I think there is an element that you were flagging at the end, which is a just transition also requires international cooperation. It also requires multilateralism, and somehow move away from competitiveness as the only element that we are seeking for. I mean, like placing the country, placing the company. I mean, I think to a certain extent, Miguel was also, I mean, raising this. It's also about adding value and care, I mean, to the economy, and those also means, I mean, creating the space for every country to live in better conditions and do the just transition. So this is a time where we are going to be asking all of you to start working a little bit in this session. We would like to put on the screen the interactive poll, Slido, because we are going to be moving into one of the hearts of this conversation, which is about the role of youth and young people, the workforce of tomorrow, so the people that are entering the labor market, and trying to get from you your perceptions of where young people in your countries, how they are thinking. And we, of course, acknowledge that probably the average here in the room is not necessarily the one that would fit, I mean, to a youth description. I don't want to, I mean, like point anyone in particular, I mean, with a few exceptions, but we are also hoping that online also some young activists are also watching us. And again, I mean, this is also an element to see where do we all feel young people are standing on these elements, just to kickstart the conversation. So this is the first simple question so that you get used to the tool. What do you think is the overall opinion of young people when it comes to the net zero transition? Of course, from very positive to very negative and a few options in between. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to you and online to reflect on this question. So it seems that you think that young people are quite positive for the time being, quite positive or very positive about the net zero transition. And a few just say that they don't know, which is also interesting as an answer. Let me know when you think, I mean, we have more or less reached the sort of time, because there is a little bit of a time lapse between the contributions online and the input from the floor. So, well, I mean, it seems like people tend to think that young people are roughly quite positive and very positive. Does it look like the impression from the panel? I mean, with some of your nods, I mean, do you think this is also your perspective? Maybe we can move to the second question in the poll. And this is about what do you think could be the main concerns or the challenges? So this is less about opinions and probably more the challenges that young people could be facing in your country or region. And you have a couple of options there. One is the awareness of the challenges of the transition. The other one is whether there are going to be job opportunities or training and education opportunities for them in their country. Elements related to participation and engagement that could be challenging. The pace, I mean, the speed of the transition, whether it's too fast or too slow. Also, a little bit what Vivi was referring to. I mean, like, this is not always happening at the same time all the time. And also the impact of the transition on some sort of personal and community sense of belonging and identity. And this is particularly strong in some of the communities that have historically been involved with coal mining or different extractives as well. So thank you all for your answers. We have a couple of questions that are taking most of your attention. It seems like, yes, the availability of job opportunities for young people is coming across as a pretty big challenge for young people, and this connects also to some of the elements we were discussing earlier. But I also encourage the panel to reflect on specifically that element when it comes to those opportunities and what can be done to make those jobs available, as well as the skills training for that. The third question that we would like to offer you to reflect on is how well do you think youth and young people perspectives are being integrated in just transition policies in your country and region? This could also apply to companies as well. I mean, so how much are you involving, or you think young people are being involved in just transition planning? So yes, I mean, like, there seems to be some convergence on how bad they are being involved, which is not surprising. Yet again, I mean, I think we need to ensure, I mean, like, that there are mechanisms for their involvement. So I think, yes, and I encourage you all to keep voting in the poll. But I think this is basically what we wanted to focus the second and last part of the event, which is to get your reflections on basically those two elements when it comes to youth in the just transition. So we have hearing about this concern over the accessibility of jobs and how much, I mean, they can get there, but are there other challenges or some elements that you would like to flag on this regard? And also any example that you would like to bring in terms of what do you think could have been practices that involve young people perspective or young people directly in the just transition. So maybe we can just change a little bit the order of the questions. I wonder, Vivi, if you had any thought. I would like to ask Vivi, then Sarah, maybe Miguel and Kamal to wrap us up, just to change a little bit the order. Vivi.
Yeah. Speaking of the youth, for Indonesia is the biggest chunk, mainly from the millennial and the Gen Z. So that's why this group of populations are now getting more aware of the climate situations as well as the challenges, and particularly for the future job. I think for the government, we also face quite challenges because it's quite new for all of us. It takes like an iterative process that we have to learn from other countries as well as the communities who could provide the best practices to to prepare. Of course, systematically, we work together with the support with the ILO, already developed the roadmap for the green job, which help us to prepare an occupancy map for the green job, as well as the competency standard and so on. But again, in the real situation, we have to engage the businesses, and the businesses also have their own challenges to decarbonize, and of course the investment and the acquiring the greener technology. And I think through all, if we have a clear map and also of visions, I think the next phase that we have to do is to work together. The examples that I mentioned earlier show that the local government has an important role to bring the investors toward other options of the businesses. For example, in the ecotourism, to support the geopark, like I mentioned. And of course, it will bring other businesses to support not only now on the mining, but to the tourism. And of course, it takes time, it takes effort and investment. 3 challenges,
Wow.
usually.
Thank you very much. You are going to...
Yeah,
like, okay.
just mention the 3, the technology, because when we are talking about the cleaner, everything needs to be around technology and digital, including it. And youth, I think it's much easier to engage this. And green investment, for sure. And of course, the transitions need to be systematically prepared. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vivi. Sarah, maybe I would like to hear your thoughts. I mean, also on whether you aligned as a youth rep also with what the general perception of where youth is standing on these issues, but also the challenges that you are facing and any good practice.
Actually, it was a hard question, like to go through political answers, but there is a huge gap between youth and their governments. Like, you're gonna find some countries are really playing a vital role and giving the floor to their youth. Like, we've been here in UAE, and today we met the Minister of Youth as their Youth Climate Champion team, and we had the opportunity to give our solutions and everything. But unfortunately, isn't applicable in all the countries, especially Africa and like all the MENA region. And like, if you talk politically or something like that, that's gonna make you in trouble. They made us making like feel fear of saying everything. So even they put you on the decision table, but you are not part of the decision. You cannot even say what you want to see as change. Also, there is some countries we have good education systems, and some universities are giving you like some great courses, but they don't get really the hand of the experience. So you are providing them with the training, but like literally I'm talking about my country, is theoretical, so I need to pay to get some training. So this is one of the hardest situation for us, like especially in MENA region and Africa. Even like UN entities trying to help. I've been in New York and met like UNDP, and they told me, like, I was like, how about Algeria? I said, oh, sorry, we don't have that program in Algeria, we should do. And like, if you're gonna have program, you should include all the regions. So there is no global north and global south, and you should include this and don't include the other youth. So even we are in youth forums and meeting each other, you're gonna see the gap between some youth in Europe and some youth in Africa. This is one of the hugest problems that we are suffering. Also, even we are working on the green skills, we don't have like access to green job in reality. This is one of the biggest problems.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And indeed, I mean, one of the key elements of a just transition as well, and in order to secure a just transition, is to do it in a situation where rights and freedom of expression can also be guaranteed, because otherwise, as you were saying, I mean, it has a political cost, it has a human cost as well to bring those challenges to the table. Miguel, your thoughts on the challenges that youth are going to face or are facing in this transition, and how we come about it.
Yeah, thank you. I had the privilege yesterday to facilitate a conversation between more than 30 young people from different countries, India, Malawi, Brazil, France, in the UN Capacity Building Hub here. And we were talking about these kind of questions. And for me, it has been very interesting. I'm very happy to see that in some way we are quite aligned with the conversation I had yesterday. In some way, I realized that they were quite focused on climate action. They, in some way, had a high level of awareness on the need to move forward a net zero economy. They understand that it is a need and we should do. But they highlighted 3 challenges. There were a lot of ideas, conversation, context, yes, but I made a note for 3 challenges. The first one, education, academic system. There are a lot of gaps to fill when you are in the secondary school, when you are at university, depending on the context. There are a lot of gaps to cover to have really robust green skills. And we have in the academic system to work a lot. Other issue that has been raised also in the panel, all the stakeholders have to be involved in the conversation. We have not to make silos. Oh, you are young, you speak with youngs, you speak only as a young, and the seniors are others, and they have their own problems. No, we have to be all in the conversation. In this conversation, yesterday we had young people, but we also had ILO, we had UNICEF, we had UNFCCC, some businesses, okay. And the third one, and for me was really shocked to see, I was really shocked to see that a lot of them were raising this issue. They told us, we are youngs, but we are also professionals. We shouldn't be unpaid. We should to be treated with decent job opportunities. We are not only youngs that should be volunteering in green campaigns and things. We should be paid properly. We should have decent conditions. And this was one of the key elements they flagged. And for me, it's a huge challenge. And that is my point, more or less.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I mean, youth deserve decent jobs. And this is what also the just transition should bring to them, isn't it, Kamal? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, no, I think I want to comment what Miguel just said now, because this notion of young people seeing themselves as professionals is the very reason why this year at the International Labour Conference there was a standard setting on apprenticeship, because young people are increasingly aligning their education systems with being professional, working at the enterprise level. We see that increasingly. It's very common in Germany, in Switzerland, but apprenticeship is taking now a lot of attention around the world. But we find that there are gaps in governance systems. People are used to, they are not interns, they are not workers as such, so they're in between. And so this new international labor standard on apprenticeship that was adopted this year will hopefully guide countries to know what are the conditions, the modalities of apprenticeship, what are the rights and obligations. But then on a broader perspective, I personally, I'm just giving you a personal opinion. I feel that in the world of today, we have a gap between the composition of our societies, where, whether in Africa, Asia, and Latin America in particular, Europe is somehow different in that case, but the majority of people are young people. But our governance systems do not match that composition of society. You go to parliaments, you go to governments, you don't see young people there. Even I am in the International Labour Organization. I cannot say this in my office, but in the governing body, the International Labour Conference, you don't see young people. So I think the governance systems need to be increasingly more aligned with the composition of the structure of societies. I think many parties, countries are now making it a practice to include young people in their delegation with a red badge. this should be a practice across international processes, whether you're in Iowa governing body, in the labor conference, in WHO, so that we increasingly align the structure of governance at all levels with the structure of our society. So that will also help young people have a greater say. What Sarah was saying, you're part of the process, but when it comes to decision, you said, okay, just wait there, young man or young girl. Yeah. Let us talk about serious matters. So because they are not decision makers.
Yeah. Thank you, Kamal. And I think also thanks for bringing this gap that is also translating at the national level, but by a huge mistrust sometimes on the role of governments and to what extent public policy can actually improve young people's lives. I mean, and we are seeing this growing discontent, or I would say skepticism more than discontent, on how public policies can actually improve people's lives. And you can see that in terms of their voting record, their participation in public conversations. So I would like to encourage you all also to start sending us your questions to this very interesting panel, as you can see, with very different backgrounds, but with a lot of convergence in terms of what all this pathway that we need to walk when it comes to a just transition. So if I manage to master the tool that I've been given to look at your questions, hopefully, it was working 1 second ago. Where's the button? Here. So yes, I mean, like we are welcoming your questions. Probably I could, while I wait, there's already one. So there is one question here, which is about inequalities, basically. Is pointing out to what extent in your conversations, or probably, I mean, like one of you would like to react to this, to what extent the issue of inequalities, and in particular wealth distribution, has been brought into the conversation about the just transition. So this is clearly an element of employment, but it's also an element of wealth and inequality. And to what extent, ask the participants, do we need also taxing the wealthiest in our societies to facilitate and fund the transition? So is there any reflection or thought that the panel would like to share on the issue of inequalities and the solutions to it, and how much it relates to just transition? Miguel.
Maybe I can jump in. In my role in some way as a climate policy expert, what I think is that in the future, as climate goals will be more stringent, and they must be more stringent urgently, no? We will have to pay special attention when we design or when we are in the conversation on climate policies to the distributional effects. We will have to pay attention, especially when we are talking about taxation, when we are talking about some limits. And it is quite an interesting conversation. We could be talking about ours, because it's at all levels, local levels, when we are talking about measures to restrictions in cities, or you are talking about taxation at national level. The polluter pays principle must be, of course, included in the taxation, but it has to take into account these considerations, allocation, equity considerations too. So there must be a very smart thinking when you design this kind of climate policies that are necessary, and they should be robust enough and environmentally integral, but taking into account these considerations. And it will be a key topic in the coming months and years.
Absolutely. Any other thought on inequalities? And I really encourage you to send us more questions in the meantime.
Yeah, for Indonesia context, actually the poverty is not as bad in area where they are a coal producer, but in fact the inequality does. So basically it happens because some activities of the mining provides the a negative impact for the environment, in which make them have a lower conditions of life. So I think one thing that we have to strengthen, that the local governments as well as the national government should ensure that they provide the basic services to all people. The basic services not necessarily only the health and educations and the public services, but also the quality of the environment and also how to handle all the kind of pollutions. I think one of it is the taxing, but of course, I think we have endorsed also other incentive and also disincentive,
tools.
including the law enforcement.
Thank you very much, Vivi. And any reflection, Kamal, on the issue of inequalities and how to come about it in the context of just transition?
Well, I think in terms of just transition, first of all, there are systems within societies, and it's well known in Europe, to ensure that everyone has some minimum level of protection, and that is the role of social protection. So I think, first of all, independently of the energy transition, the climate agenda, there must be effort to expand social protection coverage. In our world today, more than 4 billion people have no or they don't have adequate social protection, and that's what has been realized, suddenly in the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think by, first of all, extending the social protection average, because we have this notion of the dignity of human beings. So everyone has a right to some basic needs that society must provide. So I think that is one element. And the second now, if you connect it with the decarbonization agenda, the ILO and others have been thinking of ways to channel some of the revenues from carbon pricing to support social protection. I think this has also been discussed even in the context of the EU Parliament. So there are ways where you can tax the polluters, but shifting that tax burden away from labor taxation so that the tax burden altogether within the national economy remains the same, but you lessen it on labor, where people work, and you raise it on polluting activities. So these are, of course, measures that have to be in specific country contexts, but the notion of equity and fairness in all these policies, I think, should be accepted as a basic principle of public policy making.
Thank you, Kamal. I think we have maybe covered this element of inequalities, and now we are starting to get a lot of questions. So probably what I'm going to do is to read a couple of them, and then you all decide which one you would like to react to. So one question is about how non-formal learning or informal learning or non-academic learning methodologies could help young people understanding just transition. I mean, what could be done to get youth to understand these policies better? The role of unions. I mean, that actually are being flagged as not being present in this panel, because as we know, I mean, trade unions have been critical, and the just transition concept is coming originally from trade unions, I mean, with a long history of engagement and bringing together labor and environment. And another one is asking us for a concrete example of youth participation in just transition processes. If you have any example that you would like to flag. And then I have two more, but I'm keeping those two for the final round. So any reflection on any of those questions? Sarah?
Yeah, I can answer the informal education and how that youth are included. Actually, I was part of the luckiest people, like in my country, as I told you, and there is a lot of countries, they don't have formal education, great formal education, and they cannot access to global and decision-making table and see all of that. So I've been internet, everyone has internet, and there is UN, they have youth programs, we have UN youth delegates, we have IRENA, I was part of the International Renewable Energy Agency youth delegates, and we've been really learning, it was capacity building and everything we learned, and after that we had the opportunity to participate in the General Assembly and share what we thought and what we need as youth to see. Also, we have the program of international delegates for COP28, and we had like there was 11 participation, and they got like 100 youth from all over the world. There is like people with disabilities, people from small islands and least developed countries, and we had the opportunity to share and work on the global youth statement and share our ideas. And we met like the president of COP28, when this platform is really, really helping the youth, and we need to share and search about them. That's it, yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe I can share some ideas on the engagement of young people, no, in the just transition conversation, or even, I think under my experience here is very important to work in a multi-stakeholder alliance. In some way, to be able to have a conversation with the non-usual suspects when you are in a site. For that reason, we have been in some way collaborating, for example, with UNICEF, as I mentioned before. Within this framework, we are collaborating with different training centers in different jurisdictions in Spain, in Brazil, in Somalia. And we are having very interesting programs and conversations with young people, for example, that they are not in training programs, but they want to make business, and they want to be entrepreneurs, and they want to be entrepreneurs doing green things. And that is very useful if you, as a business, connect yourself with a group of young people that want to do something that is connected with the green agenda, and at the same time to make a living of it. You can provide some tools, you can provide under these kind of platforms and multi-stakeholder alliances. It is a good way, under my point of view, to start connecting people with this just transition process from a business perspective.
Thank you very much. So I would like, we have just Vivi and Kamal to react on any of those questions. I would like to add also two more so that we can wrap in time this segment. There is someone also asking about whether some countries should be subsidized or subsidized, supported, or excluded from CBAM, so from the carbon border adjustment measures that we know. This is one of the tensions that we are hearing also in these rooms. About the impact of some of the policies that are being put in place, in this case in Europe, that could have an impact also on the possibilities or on the economy of some developing countries. And here, well, there is a question whether some countries should be excluded, from those measures. And the last one is about balancing short-term with long-term aspects of the transition, and how to address that timing element between addressing the short-term and its challenges and the future. So, yes, I let you, choose, comment, and then we will wrap this part.
I actually just want to add two examples from Indonesia. First, about the pre-card program. It's actually the online applications that provide the opportunity for youth to upskilling or reskilling, and some modules including like the circularities, in which provide opportunity for them also to engage with the transitions. And the second, I just want to add the informations that the examples that I mentioned about the geopark for managing the post mining and also the tailing conservations into the more nature-based solutions is actually engaging by youth. Okay. And the success one is leading by the youth and their networks. The long-term and short-term, I think it is important to show an impact, to show best practices in order to expand, to scale up, or to review whether it is right or not. So I think we can start to the area that already start with the transition. The coal, their coal product need to reduce, and they need to prepare the alternative jobs for the jobs that already engage in the coal to other jobs. And I think there's no easy answer for this. but we have to start in stages, showing the good example. If it is work, then I think we can move faster in other areas.
Thank you very much, Vivi. Kamal.
Well, first of all, maybe the point on the role of the unions, and I think, as you've said, the just transition agenda comes from the world of work, the unions movement. So they have an important role to play because the negotiations here are not about words and tax and phasing coal, phasing out, etc. It is about the lives of people. There are people working in coal mines, there are people working in solid industries, and in any society when decisions impact on individuals, those must be part of the solutions because they have solutions, they have ideas. So it's really critical that those actors in the real economy have a much greater say. Of course, when we are in the labor organization, the trade unions are decision makers, and that's what sometimes in the negotiations here, the actors do not understand, that stakeholders and decision making is a different role. In the labor organization, unions, employers, and workers are collectively decision makers. I think it should be important to move gradually in the UNFCCC process in that direction. Not having, it's a party-driven process, but the kinds of transformations that we need require, in my view, a much bigger role of social partners. Business, unions have to have a greater say in decision-making processes within the UNFCCC. This does not mean the other constituencies, the young goals, the research organizations, etc., have no role. But those who are going to be directly impacted on when coal mines are closed, when new investment is shifted, I think they must have a bigger role. So this is, of course, a personal opinion. And then I think this short-term, long-term policy is also a challenge. I mean, you need long-term policy because the policies will shift. Look at in Glasgow, there was a discussion about coal, about natural gas, whether it was a fossil fuel or not. It was a question mark. Today, it's almost a given. It's a transition fuel. So governments would shift based on, geopolitical situation. So that's why the long-term plan is critical to give a sense of direction.
Oh, I don't need this one, it's true. It's just the habit of taking the mic. I think that's absolutely true. And I think we are getting into the end of this side event. Or I'm just checking because I'm looking at the timing. Yeah, okay. So I think this was an excellent segue. I tend to agree that this process needs to, so we have 1 more minute. So this process needs to start bringing, in particular in the context of the just transition conversation, the voices of workers and the unions, the voices of employers. I cannot resist the temptation to say that communities also need a voice in this conversation because they are like the next layer of impact and they are a fundamental part. And in them, we also have a gender dimension that has been brought in this panel, a youth dimension that has been part of this conversation. And this is not about stripping back the trade union movement for the amazing work they have done over the years raising this topic. It's just a way to say that this is a conversation that needs that social consensus and the social support to move forward. So I would like you to join me in giving our thanks to our panel, for their time, for their contribution and the incredible knowledge that they brought to the table. And I would like to thank you all also for coming and joining us in this event. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very good continuation of the COP. And yes, excellent work on just transition moving forward. Thank you.